Typically, I'm not one for acronyms, but I've got a good one for you today. It's called Grease. It's about how to oil your story engine. We'll break it down and you'll find that inside that word sits everything you need to write a great screen story. Today, we're here for the only acronym that, well, actually, it's the second one. I think we had another acronym a few classes ago when we were talking about always be connecting. Remember that one? Today, we're going a little bit more deeply. A few more letters to learn. We have a G, we have an R, we have an E, we have an A, an S, and an E. A screen character shapes, and we start understanding that character usually when we understand one aspect of them. And there is this one element that is completely essential, critical to every screen story.
Wish we could just make our own movie.
That great idea.
It'll be great drama, like the Tennessee Williams. So there's this guy, Johnny, a true American hero, to be played by me. He has it all. Good look, good job, many friends.
Greg, how long is movie script?
And then this girl, this beautiful girl, she betrayed him. But then this Lisa, sleep with best friend. We call best friend Mark.
After Mark Damon from Talented Ripley Man. And then this guy, Johnny.
He go crazy. He decided to kill himself in front of the world. And then he showed them all. That's great.
One thing's clear about these guys, they know what they want. They have one very clear goal. It is to make a movie. And characters need to have an objective that we can ultimately relate to, that we understand. Having a goal is not enough per se. You need to know what sort of goal, because there are open-ended goals that are ongoing, of which the outcome is not immediately visible or visual, rather. It's hard to visualize, to imagine the outcome of that goal. And then there's closed-ended goals that are finite and that we can imagine, that we can visualize. The outcome is visual. And sometimes you have a mixture. Sometimes you have several of those that make up the overall story.
I want to come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
He wants to go to Alderaan, he wants to learn the ways of the Force, and he wants to become a Jedi fighter. Now, what is the main goal of Luke in that story? Well, you can say he wants to find a purpose because he doesn't feel that he has the right purpose on the farm. So there's a deep goal in there, but that's not really what drives a screen story. Ultimately, we need to have something visible, something tangible. And the overall goal in Star Wars A New Hope, you could say, is saving the galaxy. But what does that look like? In order to save the galaxy, ultimately he needs to destroy the Death Star. But in order to be able to destroy the Death Star, he needs to have the plans, the blueprints. And for those, he needs to find and save the princess. So there's a number of goals that then make up a bigger goal that will lead to that end goal. So a number of goals, many of which in this case are tangible and visible. The learning of the Force, it's an open-ended goal. That is something that's going to continue on. A Jedi is continually learning. And that's not something you can easily visualize. So for a successful story, you really need both. You need that external goal for the outer journey, and you need the internal goal for the inner journey. Sometimes we can bring the goal right there on the screen, so we can show our viewers where we want to go.
We have to make our way to the space station. Over there. It's a bit of a hike. We need to use their escape pod, the Soyuz, to get back to Earth. Agreed? Dr. Stone. Agreed?
It's incredibly powerful when you work in screen drama to show your goal right there on the screen. And here we can see it's a heck of an objective to get there. When you're hanging in space, how do you get there if you don't have anything to propel you? But it doesn't matter. That's going to be the challenge. That is what we want to find out. We want to know how she's going to do it. We want to know what is going to happen next. Sometimes these clear goals help, and sometimes they're just not enough. Blade Runner had very clear goals, ultimately didn't work. But I'll show you the scene in which the goal is set up. Here is the scene in which Deckard gets his job.
I've got 4 skin jobs walking the streets. They jumped the shuttle off world, killed the crew and passengers. We found the shuttle drifting off the coast 2 weeks ago, so we know they're around.
Embarrassing.
No, sir, not embarrassing, because no one's ever going to find out they're down here. Because you're going to spot them and you're going to air them out.
Deckard is a replicant hunter, so for him, this is nothing unusual. It's business as usual. So he's going to hunt these droids and he has to retire them. It's a simple goal, but it's at least a goal that we can visualize. We know that he'll be successful when the droids are eliminated. In other films, it works more successful. In 1917, these 2 privates have to bring a message across the battlefield.
Deliver this to Colonel Mackenzie. It is a direct order to call off tomorrow morning's attack.
Why are goals so powerful? Well, one of the reasons is they help the audience focus their anticipation. Once you have a goal, you have something to look forward to in the future, and you can throw a lot of things in between the character and the achieving of their goal that creates tension, that creates the conflict that we need to keep us going. Pixar are masters in visualizing goals, and Up is probably the best example. The goal will be visible on the screen. It's one of the first things screen students need to learn, or screenwriting students need to learn, is that difference between the 2 types of goals. On the one hand, there's the objective goal with a visible target. Here in Up, we saw the house on Paradise Falls, and that's ultimately what Carl wants to achieve. He wants to get his house there. And that's what we were hoping for him to get. So that's the image that we are anticipating throughout this film. It is planted in our minds right from the start. It's very clear, a visible target, and there's a clear approach to get there. And then there are the invisible needs, the subjective goals that are more inner processes, much harder to visualize, and often it's the equivalent of therapy. The hero goes through a journey, an experience that will ultimately change them internally, behaviorally and psychologically.
Doc, I'm from the future. I came here in a time machine that you invented. Now I need your help to get back to the year 1985.
Goals are so important that sometimes they're in the title of the movie. Back to the Future. That is the goal for Marty. Finding Nemo. No. That's the goal for Marlin.
It's gone. No, we can't be gone. No. Nemo! Nemo! No! Nemo! No, please, no!
And whether you're writing for film or television, whether you believe that you've set up the goal clearly enough, there's no need to explicitly put it in dialogue, perhaps you should still consider it. This is from the TV show The Expanse. In the first episode, a simple dialogue exchange makes it very clear for the audience where we're going.
So what's my contract exactly?
Find Julie Mao if she's still here on series, detain her and ship her home.
Kidnap job. My pleasure.
Sometimes you can use the specificity of goals to the opposite. Just flip it and have a goal that is so nonsensical or vague that it leads to comedy.
Yes. I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite and I will do something.
So in this case, much of the comedy comes from our wondering what that might look like. It's less the drama, it's less the tension of wanting to see how they achieve a specific goal. It's more about, in George's case, what does that look like doing the opposite? And we already know from knowing the character that this will lead to chaos. In television, just like in film, often we have very specific goals that we may anticipate. That doesn't always work for a TV series as a whole, but it does work for individual episodes or entire seasons. Here is the example from Parks and Rec, in which the pilot gives us the goal for the first season. And again, it allows us to visualize what the character needs to achieve.
We're gonna put a park on the land.
Okay.
So I do read scripts that start off really promising, where the writers have done their homework. They've read the books, they've studied what they need to achieve, and we all know goals are important. So in their first 20 minutes or half hour, they set up those goals and they believe that that's enough. Unfortunately, it isn't. There are many cases where right after the goal's been set up, then it seems as if the character is losing interest and the writer is losing interest, and we're going off track. And suddenly there's a totally unrelated goal, or the character doesn't pursue that goal, or we go to a different character. What we need at that point when we enter Act 2 is more of something like this.
I will sell this house today.
Carolyn Burnham is not just saying what she wants to achieve, she is doing it. She's fighting, she's struggling, she's clearly doing things she doesn't necessarily like to do.
I will sell this house today. I will sell this house today.
That's what we want to see. We want to see the character fight, go into the struggle immediately.
I will sell this house today. Welcome. I'm Carolyn Burnham.
In The Adventures of Tintin, Snowy has a clear objective, finding his master and saving him. Snowy trying to find Tintin, and nothing will stop him. That's what we want to feel. We want to feel the character will not take no for an answer, like Carl Bernstein in All the President's Men.
What? Hi, excuse me.
Can I help you in some way?
Yeah, I'm Carl Bernstein. I've been waiting here since 9 in the
Would you
morning.
wait outside?
I've been waiting out since this morning. Go ahead and finish your call.
Wait outside, please, will you?
No. I'm the reporter from the Washington Post. We talked on the telephone yesterday, and you told me to come on down here, and I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I got the press here. I'm gonna have to call you back.
You know, if you didn't want to see me, I don't know why the hell you didn't tell me when I was in Washington. I wasted a whole goddamn day here. My paper's waiting for a story. You tell me yesterday, come on down here. You say I got a 9:30 appointment. I've been waiting out here the whole day.
Caught me on the worst day possible. Yeah. The man I worked for has just started a re-election campaign. Now, we're gonna have to see each other tomorrow, okay?
No, sir, I'm facing the deadline. My paper's saving space for me.
I just don't have a
well,
minute now.
I'm
We're
sorry,
gonna have
but
to find...
Mr. Dardis, I'm really very sorry.
And you see this attitude, this gung-ho attitude, then in turn leads to more conflict. But what we really appreciate here, what we're really after and trying to pinpoint, is the fact that these characters are going for it. They will not stop. So far we've seen big movies, big budgets, Hollywood movies, but the exact same thing is true for smaller, ultra-low budget Belgian art house films.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Il n'y a plus personne qui habite là.
Si, il y a mon père.
Non, c'est vide. Va demander au comptoir, il te le dira. Allez, reste pas là, je te dis, descends. Descends.
The boy and his bicycle, again, the goal is in the title. But first he needs to find his dad, who has his bicycle.
Tu vas descendre, oui?
Whoever has seen the movie True Grit, whether it be the classic or the remake by the Coen brothers, we will remember Maddie Ross.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
What do you want, girl? Speak up at supper time.
Let me do that. Your makings are too dry. I'm looking for the man who shot and killed my father, Frank Ross, in front of the Monarch boarding house. The man's name is Tom Chaney. They say he's over in Indian Territory, and I need somebody to go after him.
What's your name, girl?
My name is Maddie Ross. We're located in Yale County. My mother's at home looking after my sister Victoria and my brother little Frank.
Best go home to them. They will need help with the journey.
There is a fugitive warrant out for Cheney. Government will pay you $2 for bringing him in, plus 10 cents a mile for each of you. On top of that, I will pay you a $50 reward.
What are you?
True grit. That's what Maddie Ross has, and that's what the characters need to have. Resolve. The firm determination to do something. It does happen that the character's resolve fades, but when that happens, it better be for a good reason.
Haven't gotten lost in the woods, have you? Your last report was more than 2 weeks ago. Started to doubt your resolve.
So he's no longer on the case of his mission. He's lost his grit, he's lost his resolve because he has other priorities. We're at the midpoint reversal of Avatar, and Jake has good reasons to drop his earlier mission and go for a new goal. That does happen. It happens halfway many stories, but then there is equal and preferably even greater resolve for that new goal. Now, goals lose their power if they're not pursued with resolve. So goals are essential, they're critical, they're a number one requirement to identify with the character. But if there is no resolve in pursuing that goal, the goal loses its power altogether. Sometimes it is good to challenge your characters, to tease that resolve out of them.
Okay, you volunteered to get on this train because you know you're doing nothing in Phoenix. Okay, you're just sweeping up a fucking mess. In 6 months, every single house you raid will be rigged with explosives. Do you want to find the guys responsible, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
This is where we start. Try it on.
Now, this is a special case because you could argue that from her body language, she's also not 100% on board, but she is constantly fighting back. She's on a mission where she doubts the legitimacy of it. And that's ultimately what Sicario is about. So Emily Blunt here, starring in the Taylor Sheridan written movie about an FBI agent who is charged with a covert operation outside the borders of the United States. Same for low-budget art house films. Characters need resolve.
This is so fucking stupid.
The opening of Act 2 in Frozen River with Melissa Leo in the lead, and here the character does things that she would never have otherwise done, but she's so committed to the goal that she will do it. Next one on the list, starting with an E.
Tom meets Summer on January 8th. He knows almost immediately she's who he's been searching for.
You see, a brief moment. Events are usually short. It can be a realization, can be a sudden event, a sudden occurrence outside the character. It's always something that happens to the characters, nothing the character decides or actively does. So events are our third in the list. We're not going to linger on this for long because we've spent a lot of time on that in other classes. I just want you to remember that events are what happens to the main character. Never an action they undertake. Now I put here the main character because that's when we talk about the structure of the overall story. We place ourselves, the point of view, in the main character and then look at events that way. I think it's also important to remember that all events motivate the character and should be visible. Why? Because in that way we can anticipate the response. The events are the external element that trigger the invisible emotion. So if the event is not visible, then we cannot anticipate, we cannot feel the emotion with the character. I want to show you one short scene from Die Hard that goes to demonstrate how detailed you can be with that relationship between events and actions, and how important it is to visibly show the character's motivation.
The fuck didn't you stop him, John? Because then you'd be dead too, asshole. Think, goddammit, think.
Very simple.
We've got a fire alarm.
It would be perfectly acceptable for a character to think of it and then do it. But this is a movie. We need to see the moment when he realizes fire alarm, I can trigger the fire alarm, and that will then cause a response that will make the outside world aware of what's going on, or that something's going on inside this building. So it's a really good example of showing the audience why a character does a certain thing. So you do not skip the visible side of it. Again, in novels, in other art forms, you may be able to go directly for the emotion. You can describe the emotion. But in order to understand the emotion, we need to see the trigger of the emotion. There's an exception. Sometimes early in the film, characters will do certain things that we haven't seen the event that triggered it. It will never be the main event of the film or that then leads to the main action, but it will be what motivates the opening actions by the character. Let's move forward. That was events. You know what follows after events. Every event is followed by an action. Otherwise, I would call it a non-event. And actions are visible, but they can also be dialogue. Actions are those performances by our characters that have an impact on the world, that have an impact on literally the world, their environment, or the other characters in the story. So actions are what the main character does in response to an event.
I don't care, I really don't. I'm just tired of being afraid. Hell with him. I can't wait to see the look on the bastard's face.
So all the dialogue was essentially action. Then him putting his foot on the bonnet of the car, that's an action that showed his attitude. But immediately after that, he's tested again with a new event. And the true nature of a character can only be revealed through their actions. I like this particular moment from Nomadland in which we learn something about Fern.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Go over there.
You don't have to shout. Okay?
Stay over there.
I'm going.
Dave has just ruined her crockery that was really precious. She received it from her father, and she's carried it with her all her life. And now this was broken by Dave's carelessness. And instead of exploding and swearing at him and sending him away, she keeps contained. That's Fern. That says something about her character. There are exceptions too. Voiceover, for instance, may function as a direct shortcut to establish what the character is about, as we hear in 500 Days of Summer.
The boy, Tom Hanson of Margate, New Jersey, grew up believing that he'd never truly be happy until the day he met the one. This belief stemmed from early exposure to sad British pop music and a total misreading of the movie The Graduate.
If we do a recap of where we're at now, the goals and the resolve were part of the character's setup, and then the events and the action, they're the repeatable elements. Once you have set up your character, you give the character the goal, and you know that the character has resolve, you just throw events at them, and then actions will follow from that. And that's why it's a really good process when you're writing your story, when you're brainstorming your story, to make sure you feel your character. You know what your character is about. And this is critical, I find, from my own experience. You really need to understand your character and feel the character, feel the energy, feel the drive, feel their resolve before you can actually write the scenes. Once you are there, once you feel your character, it's just a matter of what if. What are the things that could happen within the setup of your story? And you just brainstorm those events. And then you'll see how your character is going to respond to those events in a way that shows their unique qualities, their unique traits. Then what are the final two elements? The next one starts with an S, and it's that element that sometimes sometimes part of the setup, it's sometimes part of your logline, it's sometimes in your event, but sometimes you need to add it because it just doesn't keep the audience engaged. And remember the first commandment, thou shalt not bore thy reader. Sometimes you have a logline that has a clear event and a clear action and an interesting character setup. But what have they got to win or lose? It's about stakes. Stakes are what is staked for gain or loss, positive or negative. Positive stakes is what the main character has to win, negative what they have to lose. So if you think you've got all the elements in place, ask yourself, are the stakes high enough? This is subjective, and many writers believe that the stakes in their story are high enough. But check it with others. Ask specifically, do you believe the stakes are high enough? Because when people are pointed towards it, they're going to critically examine it, and that's when you may hear the truth. Sometimes it's just not big enough a story. There's not enough at stake. If you look at, for instance, Inception, the stakes there is that Dom Cop may or may not ever get to see his kids again. That's pretty big. And within a fairly cerebral and cold story as that of Inception, that heart is provided exactly by the stakes. Negative stakes in many films are people may die. And the stakes rise if those people are close to our main character. They're often even greater if they're close to the main character rather than the main character themselves. Sometimes stakes themselves make the story, and there's not much else. In monster movies such as this one, Crawl, the stakes are provided by the monster, because it will kill. And there you go, it's a no-brainer. It is, it's intuitive, it's primal, and sometimes you just don't need to spin an elaborate story around it, because there are audiences that just need that on a Friday night. And build it into a concept that we've never heard or seen before, and you have snakes on the plane, for instance. Sometimes the stakes need to be clear. They need to be clarified, rather. Here in Crawl, it's clear. You don't need to explain anything. It is right there in the logline of the film. But sometimes you need a scene that explains what this is all about.
A robot will emerge dramatically, do some damage, thrones of screaming people, and just when all hope is lost, Syndrome will save the day! I'll be a bigger hero than you ever were.
You mean you killed off real heroes so that you could pretend to be one?
Oh, I'm real. Real enough to defeat you! And I did it without your precious gifts, your oh-so-special powers. I'll give them heroics. I'll give them the most spectacular heroics anyone's ever seen! And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions so that everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super! And when everyone's super, no one will be.
And we had a clip from 1917 when we illustrated the goal, and here we have the stakes from that film.
It is a direct order to call off tomorrow morning's attack. If you don't, it will be a massacre. We will lose 2 battalions, 1,600 men, your brother among them.
1,600 men it's a big number, but it's still anonymous. It's not enough to get the audience personally engaged with the character, so we need to have someone close to our character at stake as well. Ultra high stakes may balance out any less marketable aspects of the story, such as the structure. Hurt Locker won Oscars a few years ago, and it was a very unconventional film in many ways, but the stakes were sky high over the entire course of the film. So think about films that you know where the stakes are high and you didn't think the film itself was so strong, but yet it was very successful. The Hunger Games, maybe, and that show currently on Netflix that everybody talks about. So suppose you've got everything in place. You got your goals, you got your resolve, events in action run smoothly, they rotate like a well-oiled engine, we've got the high stakes, you still don't have a movie because there's that one thing you need to deliver still.
Tell you a secret. The last act makes a film. Wow them in the end, you got a hit. You can have flaws, problems, but wow them in the end, and you've got a hit. Find an ending, but don't cheat, and don't you dare bring in a Deus Ex Machina.
Okay, I won't explain Deus Ex Machina in this particular class. You go and look it up. It's something you shouldn't do indeed. But wow them in the end. The final act is the most important one. Everything needs to build up to that. Everything we see in the course of the film needs to support what's going to happen at the end. And I say film, but the exact same thing goes for television. So the end, it's your final letter of the grease you need to oil that engine. And we're going back to the All the President's Men for the final monologue.
You know the results of the latest Gallup poll? Half the country never even heard of the word Watergate. Nobody gives a shit. You guys are probably pretty tired, right? Well, you should be. Go on home. Get a nice hot bath. Rest up 15 minutes. Then get your asses back in gear. We're under a lot of pressure, you know, and you put us there. Nothing's riding on this except the First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of the press, and maybe the future of the country. Not that any of that matters. But if you guys fuck up again, I'm going to get mad. Good night.
A poor ending will ruin all your work. But don't get this wrong. If you have poor setup, you cannot create that big ending. So it's not a matter of, oh, you know, as long as we have this strong moment at the end, I can have lazy writing for the rest of the story. Usually when it feels like that, what you actually have is all setup for the ending, but the setup doesn't work in its own right. What it does is merely support the ending, while the entire film needs to do both. It needs to entertain and at the same time lead into that final ending. If you want to learn more about great endings, then check out Michael Arndt, The Good, the Bad, and the Insanely Great. I think it's a 2-hour video on how you write a great ending and what you need to keep in mind as you're setting it up. And then let's look at that example from Thelma and Louise again. It's not just that ending. Everything leads into that moment. Again, make no mistake, there were several options. This film could have ended in many ways. And there was no ending that was guaranteed. But this one just worked. Yeah, so all the elements need to come together and show what I would say is the necessary ending to your film. There is only one best necessary ending. The challenge is just to find it.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
If you get all these right, if you understand these elements, I think you're in good shape. I think this is the core of writing great drama for the screen. If you get these elements, you truly understand them and deliver them to what they need to achieve on the screen, I think you're in really good shape. But what do you think?
Thank you very much. That was a great class. Could I ask a question just about resolve? In the examples that we saw, it was often like a support character that would call out whether a character had resolve or a lack of resolve. If you've got like a script where it's sort of primarily around just one character with very little support character, obviously the events can sort of call upon or exhibit a lack or abundance of resolve. But can the character, him or herself, I don't know, kind of tick that box somehow, like whether it's just calling it out him or herself or...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes you have characters on their own against the elements. The first one that springs to mind is Into the Wild. I mean, he's on his own. There's no one else to help him or to talk to. And, you know, he's got a lot of resolve right there.
Great, thank you.
That was it, the acronym that will help you grease your story engine. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a like. Better even subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to miss our next free masterclass here on the channel, make sure you hit that bell button so you will receive a notification next time we post. And sometimes there are long times in between our posts. You can also be present whenever next we record something. Make sure you get in touch, put your name on our contact list, and maybe next time you'll be there in our audience so you can ask questions. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.